From Black Ships to Golden Temples, a survey of Western opera by Japanese composers. Today I'm going to be mainly talking about the post-war period in Japan, although I will be talking about pre-war influences, as well as foreign and native efforts to combine these two musical aesthetics into a new art form. I wanted to talk about this topic because I like opera a lot. I've listened to classic music since I was a kid, and since taking this class, I've become more interested about the interactions between the musical cultures of East and West, especially given the situation with Anpo and the tensions over the occupation that we saw in class. The origins of yogaku, or Western foreign music in Japan, can be traced to Japan's embrace of Western military programs, specifically the use of military bands. John William Fenton, an Irish band leader, composed the melody to what would become Kimigayo, and his band is illustrated here. Early experiments in musical theater. Chiboji Shoyo, the playwright we discussed in class, published a manuscript about the use of Japanese music in Shigenki theater, and the company Bungen Kyokai put out a play of his based on the legend of Urashima Taro, the fisherman, in the style of Wagner, but with Japanese music. The first composer I'm going to discuss is Yamada Kosaku. He was the first well-known composer of Western operas in Japan. He wrote several symphonies and songs as well. He studied in German under Max Bruch, and he was strongly influenced by Richard Strauss, and his most famous work, Kurofune, is a take on Madame Butterfly from the Japanese perspective. Next is Mayuzumi Toshiro. He was one of the first composers to work with musique concrète and electronic music. As he grew older, his work became increasingly reactionary, however, and although he still maintained his modernist Western aesthetic, he turned to native Japanese works like Yukio Mishima's Kinkakuji, which I will discuss in the next slide. Kinkakuji is a novel by Yukio Mishima about an acolyte of a temple who becomes obsessed with its beauty and ultimately decides to burn it down to escape its mocking perfection, in contrast with his prominent lisp. The work's obsession with the depraved and its tragic protagonist draw sharp parallels with Alban Berg's work. Mayuzumi made specific changes to the story, however, to accommodate the stage. Specifically, the protagonist Mizuguchi has a disabled hand rather than a speech impediment since he is singing. The opera is also written in German, further bringing it towards the expressionist heritage that Mayuzumi is drawing upon. And I have a clip of it here. Choir, which is the narrator, sort of like in the traditional Japanese theater, is chanting as the opera. Next, we have Hayashi Hikaru, who participated in the protest against the American-Japanese Treaty in the 60s. He was inspired by Bela Bartok's research into Hungarian folk music, and his chamber music and his songs reflect his radical politics, including a work about the atomic bomb at Hiroshima. His operas, however, reflect more American musicals and light operettas. For example, his work The 12 Months adapts a Slavic fairy tale about a young girl sent out into the woods by her evil stepmother, who receives 12 spirits personifying the months of the year. It is one of the most popular Japanese operas and has frequent productions in schools.
ソリは走るソリは駆ける森を目指して雪を蹴るソリは走るソリは駆ける森を目指して雪を蹴る銀の鏡のように太陽は輝き
Next we have Miki Minoru. He uses traditional instruments in his works, and he was trained in playing the koto. In 1964, he founded the Nihon Ongaku Shudan, or also known as the Ensemble Nipponia, which uses all Japanese traditional instruments. He wrote a cycle of operas based on Japanese history and literature, and Joruri is the third of those works. Joruri was commissioned by the St. Louis Opera. It is a tragic love triangle between a Buraku narrator, his wife, and his colleague, a puppeteer. The narrator writes a new play that parallels the affair between his colleague and his wife, and the unlucky adultering pair ultimately commit suicide. Here at the beginning of the play, we have a bit of a Bunraku play in a Western style.
He stood upon the mountain top. On one side the lances of his brother's men, and
You
on
can
the
see that the
other
puppeteers aren't wearing their black
but
robes,
a
and that
raging
they're singing English,
sea.
but they do have the puppets.
Come out, he cried, and smote upon the rock. And even as he heard his brother's call, and heard
The last composer I'm going to be discussing is Hosokawa Toshio. Like Miro no Miki, he is influenced by traditional Japanese aesthetics, and his first opera, Vision of Lear, was an adaptation of Shakespeare's play with No elements, and has continued to draw upon No in his work. His play Matsukaze is an adaptation of the No play of the same name about two sisters, and has been adapted by choreographer Sarah Waltz and her company to be a sort of choral effect with choreographical elements drawn from Butoh. I'm intrigued by the differing approaches towards traditional Japanese aesthetics in these plays, whether the explicit rejection of Kinkakuji, which closely parallels Alban Berg's Wozzeck, or the explicit reproduction of Bunraku upon stage, as in Joruri. Overall, I'm happy that I did this investigation because it's introduced me to a lot of interesting works and composers, and I hope that I will be able to listen to these works more fully in the future, and I hope that you do as well. Thank you for listening.